What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. Today, we have our first NFL midseason update here. We're going to do it about every 6 weeks here, so we're a third of the way through the 18-week season right now. So let's kick it off with just our thoughts on what the standings look like so far, what to look for moving forward.
Yeah, and it's going to be your thoughts as the NFL expert. But go ahead.
So let's start in the AFC East here.
Okay.
Pretty one-sided right now. The Buffalo Bills do look like, despite their loss in Monday Night Football this week, they do look like the best team in football right now, complete. And they were just a slip away from Josh Allen slip on the goal line away from beating the Tennessee Titans this week and going 5-1. They are 4-2, not the best record in the league, but they look complete. Josh Allen looks like, in my opinion, the MVP this year. They're getting production out of guys that you normally don't see. Buffalo never really threw to their tight ends, and now Dawson Knox is one of the top 5 tight ends in the league right now. So it'll be tough now that he's down with a hand injury. That'll be tough on them. The defense looks good, though. All around, they look good. Definitely the front runner, in my opinion, for the Super Bowl right now.
Okay.
Then the Patriots are at 2. 2-4 is a little deceiving because they've had some good games against both the Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 very good teams this year. So realistically, they're holding their own. They are a team that's probably a dark horse to make the playoffs at this point, despite their poor record. I like what Mac Jones has been doing. He's really proved me wrong. I wasn't sold on him as the starter coming into the year. But they look okay. Definitely some work to be done, but they do look okay. The defense looks better than I expected as well. And then the Jets. The Jets. Not much to get excited about. I mean, they did beat the Tennessee Titans in overtime to avoid putting up the big goose egg in the win column there. But Zach Wilson hasn't looked great. It is still 5 games into his career right now, but I don't expect much from the Jets from here on in. The Jets are just the Jets. They've only put up 67 points this year, so one of the worst totals so far.
Yep.
And then a surprise here, the Dolphins at 1-5. Now, I predicted the Dolphins to kind of have a slower start. Maybe not this slow, but I did expect them to be under 500 at this point. So hopefully they can put it together, but the running backs have been underwhelming. The defense has been underwhelming. Tua has been underwhelming, but I kind of expected that. He's not your prototypical quarterback, and he needs the right situation. There's a lot of areas that you can put the blame on. There's not one real spot. They're just underperforming. But they are a team that does have the talent to turn themselves around on both sides of the ball. So hopefully they can claw their way back up, but it's going to be a steep climb to try to get into the playoffs, which they missed last year.
Yep. So now let's go to the AFC West.
Yeah. This is probably the most shocking division because not with who's at the top, because I think the Chargers are having a good year, but it's really who's at the bottom in the Kansas City Chiefs. But we'll start from the top here. Up until last week, Justin Herbert looked like a dark horse for the MVP. I would have made him an MVP, one of the 3 MVP finalists. But last week was not great. But overall, they're scoring. The defense looks solid. And they're scoring in high quantities too. That shootout of a win against Cleveland was ridiculous. When Cleveland puts up, I believe it was 42 points and lose the game, obviously something went right on the Chargers offense. I like the Chargers. I think they are one of the better teams. I think they are poised to make the playoffs this year. So definitely looking to rebound week 7.
Yep.
Or week 8. It's their bye this week. Now moving on to the Raiders at 4-2. It's 4-2, but there's not a lot to be excited about as a Raiders fan right now. A little bit of internal turmoil with John Gruden being fired for past tweets that really aren't very nice. If I encourage you to go read about that, we're not going to break down John Gruden here, but John Gruden definitely made a mistake here, and I think it could be costly to the Raiders because they're a team that is still kind of finding their footing, I find. I don't think they're exceptionally great on either side of the ball. They don't create turnovers on defense. Derek Carr's looked good this year, but the running back situation, Josh Jacobs hasn't been what they expected. Receiver-wise, I'm not sold on. They don't really have a real number one in terms of a receiver. Their top receiver is Darren Waller right now, who is one of the most consistent tight ends in the league, but they don't have a consistent number one wide receiver, so that's a problem. But I expect the Raiders to be competitive up until the end here. I expect them to kind of hover around 500 here. Maybe a kind of a shot in the dark at making the playoffs this year. But the Raiders at 4-2 is a bit surprising at this time here. The Broncos at 3-3. The Broncos just know how to play defense, and only allowing 110 points this year. They're just a solid defensive team. Nothing really to write home on offense about, especially with Jerry Jeudy going on the IR in week 1. But I expect the Broncos, like the Raiders, to be competitive at that 500 mark. Not like the Chiefs, who are in 4th at 3-3. I fully expect the Chiefs to figure it out once they limit the turnovers. Obviously, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce. You do have world-class defensive pieces. They might not have a world-class defense at this point, but they're still one of the top offensive teams in the league despite their record. I fully expect them to figure it out, and they should win this division.
So now let's move on to the AFC North.
Yeah, the AFC North. We'll start with the Ravens at 5-1, the best team in the AFC right now. They look good on offense. Lamar Jackson is always a confusing quarterback to read because he isn't a throw-first quarterback. And their running backs have been surprisingly the thing that have been performing, even though their first 3 options at running back are all out injured this year. The running backs have been the strong suit of the Ravens so far, which is surprising considering they lost their top 3 options in J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill. But Latavius Murray and company have been holding it down in the backfield right now, paired with, obviously, Lamar Jackson, like I said, a run-first quarterback. Has really helped make them a very interesting option offensively. The defenses look solid as well. So this Ravens team, it's tough to read just how, when it comes to ranking teams in terms of Super Bowl chances, it's tough to really place them, but they certainly have to be up there. But just how strong compared to the other teams that are up there are they? I don't know. Because again, they have such a tough identity to really gauge.
And there's a lot of time for standings to change.
Exactly. Cincinnati Bengals at 4-2 is probably one of the biggest surprises in the NFL this year. Joe Burrow is getting it done without a real offensive line. And really, it's just like a band of misfits doing it. Jamar Chase is looking like the front runner for Rookie of the Year right now at wide receiver, looking like he's proving the critics wrong that the Bengals were right to pick him at 5 and maybe not an offensive lineman, although it doesn't look great on the offensive line when Joe Burrow gets hit so hard he suffers a throat contusion, which I did not know was an injury that was possible. But the Bengals are a team that maybe they surprise some people. Maybe they stay in the playoff conversation. If I were a betting man, I probably wouldn't pick that, but you never know. The Cleveland Browns have looked very confusing this year at 3-3. They've kind of kept it close in games they should have won, and again, games they should have won, they've also lost, like that Chargers game. When you put up 42 points, you expect to win the game. The defense has looked a little off the past few weeks, and it doesn't help that Baker Mayfield's out this going into week 7, so we'll see how. He's got a torn labrum in his non-throwing arm, so we'll see how he's able to play. Obviously, it should be an injury he can play through somewhat because it isn't his throwing arm, but never great when your starting quarterback, who's really been what's held the team together so far, when he goes down with a somewhat major injury there. And then the Steelers at 3-3. That's pretty much where I thought they would be. Ben Roethlisberger can't throw. Thank goodness he has a guy like Deontay Johnson to throw to. Juju Smith-Schuster is out for the year. Chase Claypool's looked a little disappointing. But the defense has looked okay. They've gotten the job done, and they're a type of team that Mike Tomlin always coaches his team to get the job done. So they're a team you can't count out, but this is kind of where I expected the Steelers to be, hovering around 500 at this point.
Yep, and let's close out the AFC with the South.
Yeah, the Tennessee Titans are an overtime loss away from being 5-1, and their only other loss, obviously losing to the Jets in overtime isn't great, but their only other loss is against the 6-0 Arizona Cardinals right now in week 1. So they have probably the most unique offense in football, and that is just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and let him do his job because he's the greatest running back in the league right now. Derrick Henry's a monster, and he proved that. He's proved that through the last 5 weeks, and he definitely proved that in that statement Monday Night Football win in Week 6 against Buffalo. Yeah, the Titans are a team that I don't really know what to make of them because they, like the Ravens, they do things so unconventionally that it's really hard to gauge. At 4-2, they could stay the course here, but they also could get a lot worse because the defense is not great. And everyone knew the defense wasn't great coming into it, but they're finding ways to win, and that's what Mike Vrabel does. So the Indianapolis Colts at 2-4. This is a disappointment. I don't think the defense looks as top tier as we thought it was going to be. They're starting to find their footing now that Jonathan Taylor has kind of broken out of his early funk. And he's starting to be the running back one that we all thought he was going to be on that team. But I think there is still some questions on the defense, but they're a team that is very well coached. Carson Wentz has the potential to be an MVP caliber quarterback. He did it in the year they won the Super Bowl in 2017. So he knows what it takes to win football games, and that's what you need at this point. And he does have the supporting cast in terms of receivers with guys like Michael Pittman and T.Y. Hilton. So the Colts are a team that I see trending upwards moving into kind of the second third of the season.
Yep.
And then the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not much to expect there. I expect them to stay relatively the same at this point. Probably a couple coaches getting fired there. If I had to kind of pick the coaches that are going to get fired first, definitely in Houston and Jacksonville.
So now let's move on over to the NFC and kick it off with the East.
Yeah, and we'll start with the Dallas Cowboys, obviously, top of that division at 5-1. They have the best offense in football right now. There's no questioning it. Scored the most points for, and they just the eye test, they just look the most efficient right now. It'll be interesting to see. Dak Prescott did go down injured in that overtime win against New England in Week 6. So it'll be interesting to see if he does miss time, what this team looks like, because we've seen what this team looked like last year when he went down with that gruesome leg injury. They didn't look great. But the Dallas Cowboys, I think, are finally making it that the NFC East is not going to have a losing team make the playoffs this year. They do look great, and they do have a real shot at winning a Super Bowl, which is something that Dallas Cowboys fans haven't been able to say since the mid-90s, really. So it is good to see Dallas, with how big of a franchise they are, finally having the success that we've been waiting for, and especially Dak Prescott too. He looks like an MVP candidate this year. So hopefully he can stay healthy because he is the heart and soul of that offense. And the defense doesn't look bad this year. Despite recent years, it hasn't looked like the Dallas Cowboys defense that a lot of Cowboys fans have been privy to seeing. The defense looks okay. So we'll move on to the Washington football team now. Again, best name in football. I will say that forever. The offense doesn't look great, and it doesn't help that Ryan Fitzpatrick went down week 1. So to be at 2-4, it's nothing against Taylor Heineke. He's doing all that he can. If you remember from our NFL season preview, I was really high on Washington. I believe I had them at 11 wins. But that was because of Ryan Fitzpatrick. And when Fitzpatrick's not there, the structure kind of goes. And you've seen that there on both sides of the ball. The defense hasn't looked great. The offense hasn't looked great. Just overall, not a great year for Washington or for the rest of the teams in the division. The Eagles at 2-4. This was to be expected. I don't think Jalen Hurts is necessarily the quarterback of the future for them. I think this is still a young, rebuilding team. The defense has looked a little better than I expected, but again, still not great. And then the New York Giants, they're the New York Giants. They had a lot of issues coming into the season with disgruntled players. Jason Garrett isn't the greatest offensive play caller. So obviously I think there needs to be some coaching changes there, and there's needed to be changes for a while. So along with the Jaguars and the Texans, I think the Giants are going to be pretty high on coaching changes to try to right the ship there.
Yep. Now let's move on to the NFC West.
Yeah. So the Arizona Cardinals are the only undefeated team in the league this year. And if you told me at the start of the season that, I would probably say you're crazy, considering that the Chiefs were still there, the Bills, the Buccaneers, even the Packers, I think, were a better team than them. I did not think, even the Rams in that division, I thought the Rams would be kind of blowing everyone away in that division. But the Cardinals look good. Kyler Murray looks like an MVP candidate this year. The defense looks great. The additions that they made to bring in guys like J.J. Watt has turned out huge for that defensive side. The Cardinals look like a Super Bowl contender, and they should be treated like a Super Bowl contender. Whether I'd pick them to win the Super Bowl, that's a different thing. But Kyler Murray looks like he's poised to make a deep playoff run, and this Cardinals team looks like the best Cardinals team we've seen in a while. So that's always exciting to see. And then the Rams at 5-1. This is a great record for the Rams at 5-1 because they've had one of the toughest schedules up until this point. So to only have one loss this year is huge. Matt Stafford. It's so nice to see Matt Stafford finally get the playing situation that he deserves after years of disappointing seasons in Detroit. He is a talented quarterback, and he's showing that now that he has the proper receiving staff of guys like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. He's got good running backs like Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel. The defense is world-class, being led by Aaron Donald, of course. The Rams look good this year, and there's no reason why the Rams can't continue to be one of the front runners in the NFC this year. The San Francisco 49ers, this is around where I'd put them. If it's Jimmy Garoppolo, if it's Trey Lance, there's still some uncertainty there. It's been Trey Lance the past couple weeks at quarterback, so either way, I don't think the 49ers are that big of a threat this year. The defense looks good, but the offense does not. So you can't score the ball, you can't win games. And that's what's kind of happened in San Francisco so far. And then Seattle. Russell Wilson being out for a month is not going to be great for this team, as it already proved. First week he was out, and they lose to the Steelers. So I think the Seahawks have I think they still have a lot of potential. Obviously, when Russell Wilson comes back, they are a team that I think is still very capable of making the playoffs, especially with receivers like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, running backs like Chris Carson. They still have a solid defense, and I think Pete Carroll is a solid defensive coach. That I think that they, despite the 2-4 record, they're kind of like the Indianapolis Colts. They do have the potential to trend upwards, and I think they will trend upwards once Russell Wilson comes back.
Yep. And now let's move on to the NFC North.
The NFC North, obviously the Green Bay Packers, despite the whole Aaron Rodgers saga and everything kind of looked wrong for the Packers. They look like the Packers. They look good. But the problem is they do rely on their stars way too much. Aaron Rodgers has to be on. Aaron Jones has to be on at running back. And Devontae Adams has to be a regular top-end wide receiver in the league for them to succeed. And that's something that isn't going to bode well once we get down the stretch and guys are starting to get banged up towards the end of the season. I think the Packers still have to be up there as a real Super Bowl threat this year. There's no reason why they shouldn't outright win this division. I don't think the competition is all that great in the division. But the Packers, they look good, but just kind of be wary because there is no real wide receiver too there. There is no real secondary running back there, and the defense still has its moments where it looks shaky. So the Vikings and the Bears at 3-3, that's kind of where I expected them. Not really where I expected them to be, because I expected them to be they've both kind of surprised me a little bit because I kind of expected them to have lower win totals this year, around the 5-6 game range. So the fact that they're in week 6 is impressive, but I did expect them to be close together because they are kind of the same team there. They either hit or they miss on really all fronts, and that has been the case this year. In terms of the Vikings, they really rely on Dalvin Cook to carry the workload in the backfield there. And then with the Bears, it's the same sort of thing. They require Devin Montgomery, and now that Devin Montgomery is on the IR right now, that doesn't bode well for them, especially when you have a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields kind of still learning the ropes. Allen Robinson's been a little disappointing for the Bears, but the fact that they're 3-3, it still puts them in the hunt to make the postseason, but both of those teams I see trending downwards. And then the Detroit Lions at 0-6. No real surprises there. I still like Dan Campbell as head coach. I like his vision, that real intensity, that real go out there and that like kill kind of mentality. As I think it's good. It's a good change from Matt Patricia, but it just has not reaped the rewards right now. 0-6 is not a good not a good record right now. I don't really know. They kind of leave me at a loss for words of how bad they are every year.
Yeah, and let's finish it out with the NFC South.
The NFC South, no surprises at the top. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. They don't look like they're running away with the league like a lot of people thought. And evidence of that is their game against New England. Tom Brady's return to Foxborough, and they only narrowly beat them by 2 points. So I think the Buccaneers, they still have some things to work on. I think maybe that's just a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover, but the fact that they're still 5-1, they'll definitely trend upwards, and they are still one of the front runners to win the NFC this year. The New Orleans Saints look like they're holding their own a bit. First year without Drew Brees, that's always going to be tough. But Jameis Winston looks okay. His week 1 performance was fantastic. Despite throwing very minimal yardage, he had four passing touchdowns, which was ridiculous considering the guy throws interceptions like it's his day job. But Jameis Winston's looked okay, and the defense has looked fantastic this year. So the Saints are a team that, I didn't pick them to make the playoffs this year, but they're a team that I could see trending upwards, but they're also a team I could see trending downwards to a tough team to gauge right now. The Carolina Panthers, they started the year 3-0, and they've lost 3 straight games. Christian McCaffrey is the heart and soul of that offense, and Christian McCaffrey has been out the past 3 weeks. So that's where the 3 losses come. I like the fact that Sam Darnold it seems like he's found a spot, but, Sam Darnold, it's not fooling everyone. It still is Christian McCaffrey's offense there. So they're only going to be as good as kind of with the amount that Christian McCaffrey stays on the field. If he's not on the field, they're probably going to lose. I think the defense is starting to look like the defense that Matt Rule drafted, that young defense that I think will be a defensive powerhouse. I think this is a team that some people picked to make the playoffs this year. I didn't see it, but I think eventually they'll be a perennial playoff contender like we saw in the Cam Newton era Panthers. So 3-3 is not a bad record for them, just like 2-3 is not a bad record for the Falcons at 4 there. The offense leaves a lot to be desired, but they've had some surprising finishes or surprising results from guys like Cordarrelle Patterson, who looks like one of the best all-purpose backs in the league right now. Matt Ryan, the fact that they're still hovering around 500 kind of is a testament to how good of a play caller he is. So I've been impressed with the Falcons. This is kind of what I expected in terms of their offense and defense, but the fact that they're 2-3 right now in a very competitive division and a very competitive NFC, they are a team that I think maybe could hover around 500. So we'll see how they respond, just like we'll see how all the teams respond. As we're only a third of the way through the year, a lot of football still to be played. So definitely looking forward to seeing what unfolds for the rest of the year. So that'll do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below what you've thought through the first third of the season here, through the first 6 weeks. Let us know your thoughts in the comment. comments. Make sure to look out for the other 2 parts of this video. We'll have part 2 at week 12, and then week 18 we'll have our part 3 playoff preview for you. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss when those are uploaded. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.